From diapers to dividends, the secret empire my husband never saw coming. The sound of the baby monitor is the rhythmic heartbeat of my double life. To my husband, Marcus, I am just Elena, the woman who manages the laundry, remembers the grocery list, and ensures his protein shakes are ready at 6 a.m. But when the clock strikes 1 p.m. and our 2-year-old Leo drifts into his afternoon nap, Elena Vance, the domestic engineer, dies. In her place, Evie Phoenix is born. I sat at the kitchen island, a lukewarm cup of coffee by my side, and a laptop hidden inside an old cookbook stand. Marcus thinks I'm looking up recipes for organic kale chips. In reality, I am looking at the Series B funding rounds for a logistics software I built during the witching hours of 2 a.m. feedings. He doesn't know that the errands I run are actually high-level meetings at a co-working space 3 towns over where I wear a wig and glasses. Being a stay-at-home mother is the ultimate disguise. Nobody expects a woman covered in spit-up to be the architect of a disruptive AI infrastructure. Marcus works in private equity. He spends his days judging the value of companies based on their aggressive leadership. He treats me with a patronizing kindness, leaving a stipend on the counter every Monday. Little does he know that stipend paid for my first server costs. Today, the acquisition offer arrived, $42 million, and the person trying to buy me out, my husband's firm. Marcus came home late, smelling of expensive bourbon and the grind. He tossed his jacket over the chair I had just straightened. God, Elena, I'm exhausted. You have no idea what it's like to have the weight of a multi-million-dollar merger on your shoulders. You're lucky you get to stay in this bubble. I smiled, the same placating smile I'd practiced for years. I'm sure it's very hard, honey. Do you want the lemon herb chicken or the beef? As he ate, he ranted about a ghost in the tech sector. There's this firm, Phoenix Logistics. They've cornered the market on last-mile delivery algorithms. The founder is a total enigma. No LinkedIn, no public appearances. We're bidding for them, but they're playing hard to ball. I felt a surge of adrenaline so sharp I almost dropped the serving spoon. I am that enigma. I am the ghost haunting his boardroom. Phoenix? That sounds intense, I said, wiping a crumb from Leo's high chair. I had spent the last 8 months ensuring that every time Marcus's firm looked for a weakness in Phoenix, they found a fortress. I knew his firm's tactics because he bragged about them over dinner for years. I wasn't just building a company, I was building a mirror that reflected all his arrogance back at him. The next morning, after the stipend was placed on the counter, I waited for Marcus to pull out of the driveway. My transformation began. The leggings and oversized t-shirt were replaced by a sharp, charcoal gray power suit hidden in a locked suitcase in the attic. My nanny, a woman I pay triple the market rate for her absolute silence, arrived at 9 a.m. "The usual, Elena?" she asked, taking Leo. "The usual, Sarah. If Marcus calls, tell him I'm at the library with the Mommy and Me group." I drove to the city, the air conditioning in my modest SUV humming. I pulled into the parking garage of a law firm that represented Evie Phoenix. My lawyer, Julian, was the only one who knew the truth. "They're desperate, Elena," Julian said, handing me a tablet. "Vance Equity, your husband's group, just upped the offer to $55 million. They want an in-person meeting with the founder. They're starting to suspect the founder is a local because of the server pings. They're looking for a man, of course. They've been vetting every male tech grad in the tri-state area." I looked at the documents. Marcus was using the aggressive, scorched earth strategy he'd told me about last Christmas. He was trying to squeeze my liquidity. I leaned back, a cold, calculated fire in my chest. Let them look. Tell them the founder will meet them in 48 hours. But the meeting happens at the old warehouse district. Neutral ground. No cameras. Maintaining a secret empire requires more than just technical skill. It requires psychological warfare. Every night, Marcus would come home and inadvertently give me the cheat codes to beat him. "The Phoenix guy is a genius, Elena," he said that night, rubbing his temples. "He's anticipated every move we've made. It's like he's inside my head." I was folding his laundry, matching his silk socks with surgical precision. "Maybe he just listens better than you do, Marcus." He laughed, a short, dismissive sound. "Listens? Business isn't about listening, it's about taking. You wouldn't understand. It's a jungle out there. By the way, have you seen my blue tie? I need it for the big reveal on Thursday." I had moved the tie to the back of the closet on purpose. It gave me an excuse to be helpful and submissive while I was actually calculating the final valuation of my company's patent. I realized then that Marcus didn't love me. He loved the convenience I provided. I was a high-functioning appliance to him. The realization didn't hurt. It liberated me. Every sock I folded was another brick in the wall of my independence. I wasn't just Elena the wife. I was the predator waiting for the jungle king to fall into his own trap. I spent the night in the secret office, the crawl space behind the laundry room. I had installed a noise-canceling wall and a high-speed fiber line. While Marcus slept, dreaming of his bonus, I was auditing the final documents. I discovered something chilling. Marcus wasn't just trying to buy Phoenix for the firm. He was planning to flip the tech to a foreign conglomerate under the table, a move that would violate a dozen SEC regulations, but net him a personal kickback of $10 million. He was going to gut my creation for a quick payday. My hands trembled on the keyboard. This wasn't just business anymore. This was a moral imperative. If I sold to him, the software I built to help small businesses optimize their shipping would be turned into a tool for corporate pillaging. I began coding a poison pill into the software's core. If the company was sold and the IP was was transferred to an unauthorized third party, the entire system would encrypt itself and become useless. I was the only one with the decryption key. I was no longer just looking for an exit strategy. I was looking for justice. On Wednesday, a day before the meeting, Sarah, the nanny, pulled me aside. "Elena, there was a man outside today, in a dark sedan. He was taking pictures of the house." My heart stopped. Marcus was paranoid. He was probably vetting his own life, making sure his assets were secure. Or worse, he was starting to suspect that the mommy and me group didn't exist. "Did he see you?" I asked, my voice a whisper. "No, I stayed inside." But he stayed for an hour. I had to move fast. I realized that my secret was leaking. I called Julian. We moved the meeting to tomorrow morning, 8:20 a.m., before Marcus leaves for his big day. We do it at his office. I'm tired of hiding. Julian was silent for a long time. "Elena, if you walk into Vance Equity, your marriage is over. You know that, right?" I looked at Leo playing with his wooden blocks on the floor. He deserved a mother who was whole, not a mother who was a ghost. "My marriage ended the moment Marcus decided I was an invisible person, Julian. Tomorrow, I become visible." The morning of the reveal was eerily quiet. I woke up at 5 p.m. I prepared Marcus's favorite breakfast, eggs Benedict with a side of freshly squeezed juice. I acted the part of the doting wife one last time. "Big day today, honey," I said, smoothing his collar. "The biggest," he said, his eyes bright with greed. "After today, we might even look at that vacation home in the Hamptons. You've earned a break, Elena." "I've earned more than a break," I thought. He left at 7:30 a.m., brimming with confidence. I waited exactly 5 minutes. I put on the suit. This time, no wig, no glasses. Just the sharp, cold professional I had become. I kissed Leo goodbye, told Sarah to take him to her mother's house for the day, and drove to the glass tower that bore my husband's name. The receptionist looked at me with confusion. "I'm sorry, are you here for the tour? Families aren't usually allowed in the boardroom during—" "I'm Evie Phoenix," I said, my voice echoing in the marble lobby. "And I believe I have an 8:30 appointment with Marcus Vance." The doors to the boardroom swung open. Marcus was at the head of the table, flanked by 5 lawyers. He was mid-sentence, laughing about how they were going to break the Phoenix founder. When I walked in, the silence was deafening. Marcus's coffee cup hit the table, splashing onto his pristine white shirt. "Elena, what the hell are you doing here? Did something happen to Leo? Is there an emergency?" I walked to the empty chair at the opposite end of the table and sat down. Julian walked in behind me, laying a briefcase on the mahogany surface. "There is no emergency, Marcus," I said, my voice steady and low. "Other than the fact that your due diligence is severely lacking. I am the founder of Phoenix Logistics. I am the person you've been trying to break for 6 months." The room turned into a vacuum. The lawyers looked at Marcus, then at me, then back at Marcus. "This is a joke," Marcus stammered, his face turning a dark shade of purple. "Elena, go home. You're embarrassing yourself. You don't even know how to use a spreadsheet." "I don't need a spreadsheet to know you're planning an illegal offshore flip of my IP for a $10 million kickback," I said, sliding a folder across the table. "I have the logs, Marcus. I have the emails. I built the system you're trying to steal." One of the senior partners at the firm opened the folder. His face went pale as he read the documentation of Marcus's side deal. The atmosphere in the room shifted from patronizing to predatory, but the target was no longer me. "Marcus," the partner said, his voice cold. "Is this true? She's lying. She's a stay-at-home mom. She spends her days at the park." Marcus screamed, standing up. I stood up too. I looked him dead in the eye, and for the first time in 10 years, he actually saw me. He didn't see the woman who cooked his meals. He saw the competitor who had outmaneuvered him at every turn. "I spent my days building an empire while you were busy underestimating me," I said. "The offer is off the table. I am not selling to Vance Equity. In fact, I'm filing for divorce, and as part of the settlement, I'll be seeking your shares in this firm as restitution for the marital assets you used to fund your illegal side ventures." Marcus collapsed back into his chair. He looked small. For the first time, he was the one who was invisible. I walked out of the building, the sun hitting my face. The weight of the secret was gone, replaced by the exhilarating lightness of freedom. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from my bank. The stipend had been deposited. I laughed, a genuine, deep laugh. I drove to pick up Leo. When I saw him, I didn't feel like a mom or a CEO. I felt like a human being. I had proven that the world's most powerful weapon isn't money or status. It's the person everyone assumes has neither. The news hit the wires an hour later. Vance Equity partner terminated amidst scandal. Phoenix Logistics founder revealed to be local tech prodigy. I sat on the floor with Leo, building a new tower out of blocks. This time, the foundation was real. The secret was out, but the empire was just beginning. I wasn't a stay-at-home mother anymore. I was the woman who stayed home to take over the world. The silence of my new penthouse was a stark contrast to the suburban house I had shared with Marcus. It had been 48 hours since the boardroom reveal, and the world was reeling. My phone was a glowing ember of notifications, investors, journalists, and a barrage of increasingly desperate texts from Marcus. He was no longer the poised private equity titan. He was a man watching his world incinerate in real time. I sat by the floor-to-ceiling window watching the city lights. Leo was asleep in the next room, protected by a security detail I'd hired the moment I left the firm. The invisible asset was now the most hunted woman in tech. Julian, my lawyer, called me at midnight. Elena, the firm is trying to claw back the IP. They're claiming that because you used marital assets, specifically the laptop Marcus bought you and the home internet, the software belongs to the firm. It's a desperate reach, but they're going to tie you up in court for years. I looked at my hands. They were steady. Let them try. They're forgetting one thing, Julian. I didn't just build the software. I built the infrastructure it runs on. If they sue me, I'll pull the plug on the servers. Every client they have using the beta will go dark by morning. Tell them I'm not just the founder. I'm the landlord of their digital world. 2 weeks later, I sat across from Marcus in a sterile conference room. He looked terrible. His skin was sallow and his expensive suit hung loosely on his frame. He had been fired from the firm, but he was still a party to the IP lawsuit. He stared at me with a mixture of hatred and a strange, warped kind of longing. "How long, Elena?" he whispered while the court reporter was setting up. "How long were you planning to destroy me?" "I never planned to destroy you, Marcus," I replied, not breaking eye contact. "I planned to build something of my own. You just happened to be standing in the way of the light. You destroyed yourself the moment you decided I was a piece of furniture." The deposition was brutal. Their lawyers tried to paint me as a neglectful mother, someone who was distracted by code while her child needed her. They showed logs of my late-night coding sessions as evidence of instability. I let them speak for 3 hours. Then, I produced the records from the nanny, the developmental milestones I'd logged for Leo, and the video feeds from the nursery. I had been more present in my child's life while building a company than Marcus had been while simply existing in the same house. The lawyers' faces fell. I wasn't just a CEO, I was a mother who had mastered the art of time. With the divorce and the lawsuit in the headlines, the vultures began to circle. These weren't the standard investors. These were the firms that specialized in distressed assets. They thought I was a woman in crisis, a housewife, who had gotten lucky and was now drowning in legal fees. I met with a man named Sterling Thorne, a billionaire known for saving companies by stripping them of their soul and selling them for parts. He met me at a private club, leaning back with a smug grin. "Elena, you're in over your head. The legal fees alone will eat your Series B before you even launch. I'll buy Phoenix for 70 cents on the dollar. You walk away with 20 million, no more lawsuits, and you can go back to being a mom. It's a win-win." I took a slow sip of my tea. "Sterling, you think I'm a victim because I'm in a lawsuit. What you don't realize is that I am the lawsuit. I've already filed a countersuit for corporate espionage against the 3 firms you have hidden interests in. If you don't walk out of here right now, I'll leak the documents showing you were the one who leaked Marcus's offshore deal to the press to lower my company's value." His grin vanished. He realized I wasn't looking for a savior. I was looking for a target. While I was winning the corporate war, the personal toll began to weigh on me. Leo started asking for data. Every time the doorbell rang, I jumped. Marcus had moved from anger to a chilling kind of stalking. He didn't follow me physically, he followed me digitally. I found a Trojan horse in my personal cloud, a sophisticated tracking script. It wasn't something Marcus could have written. He had hired someone. My husband, the man who used to complain about the salt in his soup, was now using professional hackers to find a weakness in my security. I realized then that this wouldn't end with a settlement. Marcus didn't want the money anymore. He wanted to regain the power he felt he'd lost. He wanted to see me fail, not for the profit, but for the satisfaction of being right about me. I sat in the dark of my office, realizing that the secret startup had turned into a secret war. I needed to find a way to end him, not just legally, but professionally. I stayed up for 72 hours. I went back to my roots, the naptime architect. I built a digital honeypot. I left a file in my cloud labeled Phoenix Core Source Code Unencrypted. It was the bait. Within 4 hours, someone bit. I watched the IP address in real time. The signal was bouncing off servers in Eastern Europe, but the origin point was a small apartment in the city, a place Marcus had been staying. I didn't call the police. I called the SEC. If Marcus was trying to steal source code from a company he was currently suing for ownership, it wasn't just a civil matter, it was a felony. I watched the progress bar as he downloaded the source code. What he was actually downloading was a self-replicating ledger of every illegal trade he'd ever made during our marriage. Data I'd scraped from his old laptop years ago and hidden in the code. He was hand-delivering his own arrest warrant to himself. The news broke at 3 a.m. Marcus Vance had been taken into custody for corporate espionage and financial fraud. The video of him being let out in handcuffs, still in his silk pajamas, went viral. I stood in Leo's room watching him sleep. I felt a pang of sadness, not for the man Marcus had become, but for the ghost of the man I thought I'd married 10 years ago. But that sadness was quickly replaced by a cold clarity. He had tried to take my life, my company, and my dignity. He had underestimated the stay-at-home mother, one last time. The next morning, the lawsuit from his former firm was dropped, without Marcus as a witness, and with the evidence of his fraud coming to light, they didn't want to be anywhere near the Phoenix brand. I was finally officially the sole owner of my empire, but the victory felt hollow. I realized that being at the top meant being the biggest target on the map. I decided to stop hiding. I scheduled a press conference at the site of the old warehouse where I'd had my first secret meeting. I didn't wear a suit this time. I wore a simple sweater and jeans, the uniform of the woman who had built an empire in the cracks of a domestic life. For years, I was told that my contribution to society ended at the front door of my home. I told the crowd of reporters. I was told that motherhood was a full-time job that required me to switch off my brain. But motherhood didn't make me soft. It made me efficient. It made me a strategist. Phoenix Logistics isn't just a software company. It's proof that the most undervalued resource in this country is the woman sitting in the school pickup line. The stock for Phoenix, pre-IPO, tripled in value based on sentiment alone. I wasn't just a founder anymore, I was a movement. But with fame came a new kind of pressure. Every mommy blogger and every feminist icon wanted a piece of me. I was being pulled away from the code, away from Leo, and into the very machine I had built Phoenix to avoid. A major tech conglomerate, Ether, offered a buyout, $1.2 billion. It was the Godfather offer, the kind you don't refuse. If I took it, I'd be one of the wealthiest self-made women in the world. I could retire, buy an island, and never look at a line of code again. But when I read the fine print, my heart sank. Ether wanted to integrate my delivery algorithms into their military-industrial wing. My software, designed to help local florists and bakers get their goods to customers faster, was going to be used to optimize drone strikes. I sat in the boardroom of Ether's glass and steel tower. The CEO, a man who smelled of ozone and arrogance, pushed a gold pen toward me. "Sign it, Elena. Think of your son. Think of the legacy." "I am thinking of my son," I said, pushing the pen back. "And I don't want his legacy to be a world where his mother's brain was used to make killing more efficient. The deal is dead." Refusing Ether was like declaring war on the sun. Within 24 hours, my server providers started experiencing technical difficulties. My payment processors flagged Phoenix for unusual activity. The tech giants were closing ranks. They wanted to show me that while I might have beaten one man, I couldn't beat the system. I moved my operations back to the secret office behind the laundry room. It felt poetic. I was back in the shadows, fighting a guerrilla war against the titans of Silicon Valley. Julian warned me that we were running out of cash. "They're bleeding us dry, Elena. You have to compromise." "I didn't build a secret empire to compromise," I told him. "I built it to change the rules. If they want to play dirty, we'll go dark." I initiated Project Ghost. We moved our entire database to a decentralized blockchain, making it impossible for Ether to shut us down. I was no longer a CEO, I was a digital insurgent. The tension reached a breaking point when Ether filed an injunction to seize my servers, claiming national security interests. They were coming for my house. They were coming for the crawl space. I stood in my kitchen, the same place where I'd started this journey with a lukewarm cup of coffee and a dream. I heard the black SUVs pulling into the driveway. They weren't just here for the tech. They were here to silence the stay-at-home mother who had dared to say no. I looked at the stipend Marcus used to leave on the counter. It was still there, a dusty relic of a past life. I picked it up and threw it in the trash. As the front door was kicked in, I hit a single key on my laptop. "If you want the code so badly," I whispered as the agent swarmed the room, "come and find it in the cloud. It's free. For everyone. Forever." I had open-sourced the most valuable logistics software in history. I was broke. I was about to be arrested. But I had just destroyed the monopoly of the world's largest corporation. I looked up at the lead agent and smiled. "You're late for nap time," I said. The metal bench was cold, and the fluorescent lights hummed with a headache-inducing frequency. I had been in federal custody for 6 hours. They called it protective custody, but the handcuffs suggested otherwise. The lead agent, a man named Miller, who looked like he'd never smiled in his life, sat across from me. "Do you realize what you've done, Elena?" he asked. "By open sourcing the Phoenix protocols, you've put the global supply chain in the hands of anyone. Terrorists, rival nations, teenagers in basements." I leaned back, my wrists aching. "I've put it in the hands of the people, Miller. No more hidden fees, no more Ether monopoly, no more drone strike optimizations. If you want to arrest me for giving the world a better way to move food and medicine, then go ahead. But you should check the news. The public is calling me a saint. If you charge me, you're turning a saint into a martyr. Are you ready for that PR nightmare?" I was released at dawn. No charges. Not because I was innocent, but because the public outcry was deafening. Thousands of people had gathered outside the precinct, holding signs that read, "Mother of the mesh and practical over powerful." I walked out to a sea of camera flashes. I didn't say a word. I got into Julian's car and went straight to a motel under a false name. I needed to see Leo. My son was being kept at a secure location by my mother. When I finally held him, the weight of the last 2 years finally broke me. I cried, not for the billions I'd given away, but for the simple fact that I was still his mother, and he still smelled like baby shampoo and milk. I was broke, technically homeless, and the most famous woman on the planet. The world changed overnight. Because the Phoenix Code was now open source, thousands of small businesses began building their own local Phoenix nodes. The monopoly of Ether was collapsing, but I noticed something. While the tech was free, the coordination was missing. People were using my code, but they were doing it inefficiently. I sat in the motel room, Leo playing with blocks on the floor, and I opened my laptop. I didn't need $1 billion. I needed a community. I started a new project, The Hearth. It wasn't a company, it was a nonprofit foundation. I began writing the social contract for the new economy. I wasn't the CEO anymore. I was the librarian of a new world. Marcus was out on bail, awaiting trial. He called me from a burner phone. He didn't sound angry anymore, he sounded hollow. "You won, Elena," he said, his voice cracking. "I'm losing everything. The house, the cars, the reputation. Even my lawyers are quitting because I can't pay them." "You didn't lose everything to me, Marcus," I replied. "You lost it to your own reflection. You thought the world was a game of chess where you could move the pieces at will? You forgot that the pieces have lives of their own." "I just want to see Leo," he whispered. "You can see him when the court says you're stable," I said firmly, "and you will see him as a father, not a tycoon. If you can't be a man without a bank account, then you have nothing to offer him." I hung up. It was the last time I'd ever speak to him without a lawyer present. 1 year later, I was living in a modest farmhouse in Vermont. The Hearth Foundation had become the backbone of the global economy. I didn't take a salary. I lived off the royalties of a small patented hardware sensor I'd built to accompany the software, a mother's gift to the industry. A delegation from the top tech firms came to my door. They weren't there to sue me. They were there to ask for advice. They had realized that the infinite growth model was dead. The sustainable growth model, the one I'd practiced during nap times, was the only thing that worked. I invited them into my kitchen. I made them coffee. "The problem with your industry," I told the CEOs of the world's largest companies, "is that you design for the 1%. You design for the person who wants to live forever. I design for the mother who just wants her groceries to arrive before her kid wakes up. If you want to survive, stop trying to be gods. Start trying to be neighbors." Leo was 5 now. He started school, and on his emergency contact form, under occupation, I wrote architect. Not founder, not CEO, not insurgent, just a builder. I started a scholarship for late start founders. We funded parents, caregivers, and people who had been out of the workforce for years. We didn't look at resumes, we looked at life experience. If you could manage a household of 3 kids on a budget, you could manage a department. If you could navigate a toddler's tantrum, you could navigate a boardroom. My secret startup had grown into a public movement. Ether declared bankruptcy. The company that had tried to weaponize my brain was sold for scraps. The CEO was investigated for the very same fraud Marcus had committed. It was a poetic end to the era of the tech bro. I watched the news from my porch, a sense of peace washing over me. I hadn't just built a better mousetrap. I had changed the way the world valued time. I looked at my hands. They were older, weathered by gardening and parenting, but they were the same hands that had written the code that broke the world's chains. I received a message from an anonymous source. It was a copy of the original invisible asset file Marcus had kept, but someone had edited it. At the bottom, in code I recognized, it said, "Thank you for the light." It was Julian. He had been my silent partner all along, the one who had guided me through the legal minefields. I realized then that I was never truly alone. The secret startup was a collective effort of all the people who had been pushed into the shadows. We were a ghost army, and we had finally won. I was invited to speak at the UN. I didn't bring a PowerPoint. I brought my son. "We are entering an era of radical transparency," I told the assembly. "The secrets we keep are the things that eventually destroy us. Whether it's a secret startup or a secret debt, the truth is the only currency that doesn't devalue. My son will grow up in a world where his mother's worth isn't determined by a man's approval, but by the value she adds to her community. That is the only IPO that matters." As I walked off the stage, the world stood up. Not for the billionaire, but for the woman who had the courage to be ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. 10 years later, Leo is graduating. I am sitting in the audience, just another mom in a sun hat. My phone buzzes, a notification from the Hearth Foundation. A small village in Africa has just used the Phoenix Protocol to distribute vaccines to 10,000 people in a single day. Cost $0. I smile and put the phone away. I don't need to check the code anymore. It's working. It's breathing. It's alive. I look at the empty space next to me where Marcus might have sat. I don't feel anger. I feel nothing but the warmth of the sun and the pride of a mother. I open my notebook, the same one I used during the nap time days, and I write the final entry. Project, life. Status, optimized. Founder, Elena Vance. The secret startup was finally over. The real work was just beginning.